Now it's time for Lefties Losing It. This next clip is delicious. It's got my favourite ingredient, a big fat dose of instant karma. Watch here as some deranged Karen accosts a man on the New York subway for the crime of wearing a MAGA cap. She felt emboldened to be a nasty bully. After all, she's in deep blue New York. But listen as others in the carriage tell her to back off. And they also tell her that people like her are the reason why Trump won. Enjoy.
That's why he won. Because people like you. That's why he won. That is why he won, because of people like you. You need to stop it. Let him live.
Bro, just like good. Chill, bro.
You're okay with that? He's a racist.
I'm okay. How can I be racist?
He's a racist.
Okay with it.
If you voted for Trump, you're a racist. He's a racist.
How can I be racist?
No, he's not racist.
Why are you wearing that hat?
And the best bit is about to come, because this MAGA-hating loser is about to land flat on her face. Literally.
Well, this is my stuff. I hope you enjoy the hat.
How good is that? Can you believe that crazy woman chased that poor kid? As I said, instant karma. Now, the Democrats are in all sorts of trouble. Their approval rating is under 30%, in the 20s, and the party is now being taken over by the looniest, far-left radical commies to ever be elected to public office in the United States. Among them is this charmer from the great state of Texas. Let's listen to how Jasmine Crockett used to sound.
No one could have told me that when I went down to Austin, now it looks like a little bit over a year ago, that I would be running for Congress. It's just not what my plan was.
What a nice girl, but marvel here at the accent switch, or code switch, as the kids call it.
The trans kids that want to play the sports, Lord have mercy, that is the biggest issue that we had. Since when? Since when? Find the little trans child that is ruining your life. Like, I mean, I'm just like...
Talk about Kamala 2.0, God forbid. And now that she's adopted this ghetto persona, despite her private school education, including at the very expensive, very exclusive Rhodes College, Jasmine has been accused of inciting violence.
On March 29th, it's my birthday. And all I want to see happen on my birthday is for Elon to be taken down. Yes.
What a nice girl. And here she talks about wanting to punch opponents, including Ted Cruz.
I think that you punch. I think you punch. Okay, you okay with punching? But like, it's Ted Cruz. I mean, like, this dude has to be knocked over the head, like, hard, right? Like, there is no niceties with him, like, at all. Like, you go clean off on him, right?
Yes, the modern Democrats, they're the party of neo-Marxists like AOC and Bernie Sanders. They're leading the party right now, leading them straight to the depths of hell.
This isn't just about Republicans either. We need a Democratic Party that fights harder for us too.
We have a message for Mr. Trump. And that is, we will not allow you to move this country into an oligarchy.
No wonder Gavin Newsom is trying to relaunch himself as a moderate, not the far-left governor of California. But he's got a fair bit of baggage. Even CNN can see that. Watch here as he claims that no one in his office would use the woke term Latinx, Latinxes I like to say, except, well, someone did.
By the way, not one person ever in my office has ever used the word Latinx.
So can we finally put that to bed?
Yeah,
we agree?
where did that even
No
go?
more Latinx,
like,
everybody.
Well, I just didn't even know where it came from. I'm like, what are people talking about?
But there was a person who used Latinx. It was actually a really important person. It was him, right?
Yeah, that's right. And look, these aren't minor shifts. These are progressive issues that Gavin Newsom used to champion until fairly recently. And now he's not just walking away from them. He's sort of acting like they were never legitimate.
I hope we can really paint a picture in terms of consciousness of how impactful this has been on the Latinx community. The Latinx and black communities. You've got politicians that are banning not assault rifles, but the word Latinx. They're not even serious.
Joining me now is Sky News contributor Kosha Gator. Kosha, we just saw Gavin Newsom there. He must see a golden opportunity here to appear like the moderate, the sane, sensible choice. But given how radical he has been as San Francisco mayor, as California governor, can he really pull it off, or is there just too much baggage?
There's a lot of baggage, and in this era we live in with unlimited videotape and clips immediately come out to counter them, it's really hard to just completely brush under the rug what you've done. But I do think the right should dismiss him at their own peril, because he is a very savvy operator. He presents very well. He's good looking, has the hair, is now
That's right.
He's doing this thing of inviting right-wing people onto his podcast. It's all part of the strategy, because he does see, as you say, a void in there. There is no obvious leader. He's crafting his entry onto the national stage for obvious reasons. And we'll see if it works. We'll see if it works. I find it difficult just because his record is so far left outside of the mainstream of the party, and that will come out.
Like he's had just significant failures in California, but like you said, he's going to have the media on his side. He's very good looking. He's charismatic. He's people who are not particularly engaged in politics would, I think, be a little bit bamboozled by his presentation. He seems like someone who is competent, but then you look at what's happening in California and it's a mess.
It is, and I think the wildfires as an example, things fade because memories are short, but just the video and the imagery around that is going to live on for a very long time, and he presided over that along with others. So I do think he's got an uphill battle, but do not discount him.
Now, I mentioned Jasmine Crockett's ill-considered comments earlier. Attorney General Pam Bondi has had this warning for the Democrat after she was accused of inciting violence.
Now you have this Congresswoman Crockett who is calling for attacks on Elon Musk on her birthday. Let's take him out on my birthday, she says. And yet she turns and says, oh, I'm not calling for violence. Well, she is an elected public official, and so she needs to tread very carefully.
Elon Musk has death threats against him, credible death threats, many of them. You would think any politician would not be pouring fuel on that fire. And those comments, whether you think they amount to incitement or not, they're unwarranted.
Absolutely. So the bar for the legal standard for incitement is very, very high for good reason in the U.S. And as long as they're playing with words, it's just words. But they do skirt awfully close to that line. And be that as it may, it's not about legal adjudication. It's about just what a leader of a constituency should behave like. But the thing is that they do have a political shield where they know that it is difficult for Pam Bondi or somebody on the other side to really go after them and litigate them, even if that's true. So they use that. That's why you see her. You see Maxine Waters comes to mind. She used to say push back. You had Chuck Schumer reaping the whirlwind against the Supreme Court on the steps. You had Governor Phil Murphy of New Jersey saying openly that he's aiding and abetting an illegal on top of his garage, which is against the law. So they're definitely coming very close to that line, and we'll see how much the other side pushes back.
And this is after a Republican was shot during a baseball game, Steve Scalise, and it seems to have really not sent the message home that they do have lunatic supporters who could take something that he said, even if it's kind of in jest, kind of not, and do some damage. Now, we talked about who's going to be the next leader. Is it AOC? Is it Bernie Sanders? Is it Gavin Newsom? Kamala Harris is the one who's leading the polls. This is how badly the Democrats going. The failed presidential candidate is the most popular option for 2028, according to a recent poll. Surely she can't run again. Do you think she has the appetite to do it? And would they be stupid enough to run her again? Because she was a uniquely terrible candidate.
Appetite, I think she very well might. In terms of ability, we've seen that before because she has never won anything competitive. She's great at getting appointed. She's really good at climbing the internal machinery of the Democrat Party. Yes, her positions in California were elected, but in California, as long as you're the chosen one within the Democrats, you're pretty much guaranteed that position. And we've seen how she's done every other which way. I think those polls just have recency bias, that she's fresh in people's minds, so she polls well, but it's not going to last.
And I think there's a little bit of sympathy because she did lose and lost badly, lost the popular vote, lost every swing state. So I would imagine if you're a Democrat, you'd feel a little bit sorry for her. And this was a poll of Democrats and left-leaning independents. Now, let's play this clip of Bill Maher. He's among those who can read the data and read it well and see the blue states are losing population, they're losing people, and they're losing power.
California is projected to lose 3 seats, New York 2, also going to lose a seat, Minnesota, Oregon, Rhode Island, Illinois, all blue states. Who's getting these? Texas, Florida, Idaho, and Utah. I mean, this looks like game over.
It's very interesting, isn't it? Because has been a lot of fear that all these Californians and New Yorkers, all these left-leaning people moving to places like Tennessee and Texas and Florida, were going to turn those states purple or perhaps blue down the track. They were going to take their voting records with them. But perhaps it's actually going to work the other way, that the population shift is going to see more power for the red states.
So there's another counter dynamic at play. So the thing underpinning this, as you say, is this mass exodus from states and cities and counties that they ruin with far left policies, and then they themselves don't want to live in them, whether it's taxes or cultural things or everything else. So they leave, and crime, yep, things that really affect your day-to-day real life. And there is that problem on the downstream trickle effect of that. In local elections and the people that end up coming in, they do drift the lifestyle of the red states more blue. But the counter dynamic over here that Bill Maher is touching on is just a straight up mathematics, because the House seats are based on apportionment. If suddenly 2% of the population moves from California to wherever, Florida, then they lose 2 House seats, Florida gains. And also, he didn't mention this, but it would impact the electoral votes potentially, which is based on the same thing, census counting of the population in each state, and that magical path to victory of 279. It could look differently in a few years if enough of this recalibration happens.
I do wonder if that trend is going to continue now that Trump is president, because is his impact going to be enough to keep people in blue states, or are they going to be even more likely to flee to the red states, where they can see this alignment between that state and the White House and the policies that are being advocated?
It's a good point, because if the big picture improves, the overall economy and wages and the job market and crime and all of that that's under his purview, maybe it'll make the left-wing states more tolerable to them, because there is a lot to love about those states. California and New York have amazing things about them that people, I'm sure, the bar is high to finally leave them. The problem is, I think, local politics, and especially schools, where that's the stuff that really hits home. And as long as they keep letting boys play in girls' sports and things like that, I do think you'll see families pick up and move.
Now, this is a big stuff up for the Trump administration. And really, if this reporting is accurate, then heads need to roll. The leftist activist editor-in-chief of The Atlantic magazine, Jeffrey Goldberg, was included on a message chain in which top Trump administration officials discussed strikes against the Houthi terror group in Yemen. Kosha, this would be a stunning breach of national security. One of the men in that message chain, Defense Secretary Peter Hegseth, was asked about the breach.
Can you share how your information about war plans against the Houthis in Yemen was shared with a journalist in The Atlantic? And were those details classified?
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again, to include the hoaxes of Russia, or the fine people on both sides hoax, or suckers and losers hoax. So this is a guy that peddles in garbage. This is what he does.
Kosha, whoever's responsible, I don't care if it was an innocent mistake, whether it was incompetence or malicious, they have to go. If this is accurate, it is such an enormous breach, and you would just think in the second Trump term, mistakes like this can't happen.
It's not good. And they have very little margin for error. So on the merits of it already, because it's about a military strike, national security, potentially, we haven't seen all the messages that were in there, but potentially there was classified or highly sensitive, at least, materials being used in that channel. And then this journalist, who is not a friend of the administration at all, accidentally, or maybe it was sabotage, I don't know, we'll find out. We may never find out. I think the issue is, if it was Mike Walls in particular, that's one thing that's out there in the reporting. He also does bring a lot to the table, national security advisor, and so the role he's playing with negotiating all these deals globally, I'm sure President Trump will weigh that. opposite, this breach. If it were a staffer, a little bit different. And I'll also make the point that it would show, I think, leadership if they did something, especially if it's a staffer, because the same has not happened in other branches, like the Supreme Court never told us who leaked the Dobbs decision, which was definitely malpractice or sabotage. And if he does that over here, I think it's a good message, but we'll find out.
It's incredible because the journalist that's involved in this, Jeffrey Goldberg, is no ordinary journalist, no ordinary editor. He has been at the forefront, complicit in multiple hoaxes and anti-Trump propaganda, including the Fine People hoax. So for him to be the one involved, I think is astonishing. We'll have to wait and see just what the real truth is behind this story. Now let's talk about the peace deal between Russia and Ukraine that's being negotiated. And the New York Post reports that despite the very tense meeting with the US president last month, Ukrainian President Zelensky believes Trump remains Ukraine's strongest weapon against Russian President Vladimir Putin. President Zelensky believes Trump is looking for a big win on the world stage by ending the war. And he said if he wants to, Trump can squeeze concessions from the Russians because he seems to be the only one that Putin fears. Zelensky said that to Time magazine. It was his first interview since that Oval Office dust-up. It's been interesting to see how the fallout from that has progressed. We saw Europe beating its chest and making all sorts of pronouncements about boots on the ground, but it's gone back to the US negotiating this peace deal. It's gone back to precisely what the White House wanted all along.
Return to the fundamentals after all that dust settled. He's right. I think a lot of the points he made, President Zelensky, in that piece, where he says that ultimately the U.S. is his strongest weapon. True, because without the U.S., they don't stand a chance, as was famously put out into public in that meeting. It's true. I think he was honest when he said that Trump is the one person Putin fears, and we can litigate that word, but at least he wasn't saying Trump is Putin's puppet, which is something that the other side has been saying for far too long. And he is right. The third thing he said is that the U.S. can squeeze Russia if they want. I think that's the key here, that the administration may not necessarily want that because they look through the lens of realism. They want to recalibrate U.S. and Russia relationships. Doesn't mean it's perfect, doesn't mean everybody is perfect, but is that a better strategy for advancing U.S. interests when you look at China and everything else? And that's kind of where he's going. So that's what they're looking at. Legacy does matter to Trump for sure, and the administration. They want the win for political and legacy reasons. So all of that is true. And if there's enough alignment across all the players on the chessboard, then hopefully a deal happens soon.
And you do get the impression that what's best for the US is going to be at the heart of this deal. Of course, they're going to try to negotiate an advantageous deal for Ukraine, but it also has to benefit America because that's everything that Trump cares about. And this point about Putin fearing Trump that Zelensky made, well, the fact that he didn't do anything during Trump's first term and he's now seems to be cooperating for now, it says something because we've seen him behave very differently with Biden and Barack Obama.
Undeniably, and that point was made throughout the campaign. People get it intuitively. And I think that's also why the Trump administration, what they're going to try and negotiate, hopefully, is something with lasting impact. Because if the strategy is that he fears only the person in the White House now, that will end in 3.25 years from now. And so putting in place something that is stickier would be beneficial for everybody.
Well, there was that rumor that did the rounds and the Trump camp did nothing to dispel it, that he threatened to bomb Moscow if Vladimir Putin's forces invaded Russia during his first term. And Putin obviously took that seriously. Whether he was ever going to follow through or not is a different story. But the doubt was enough to see him refrain from doing that. Kosha Gator, thank you so much for your time tonight. Joining me now is comedian and host of Primetime with Alex Stein on Blaze TV. Alex, Elon Musk's transgender son has featured in Teen Vogue. Vivian Jenna Wilson is also very active online.
Could you give us some of your political beliefs?
Kill everyone now. Condone first-degree murder. Advocate cannibalism. Eat Filth are my politics. Filth is my life. Take whatever you like.
And the 20-year-old had plenty of nasty things to say about his father. He said he's a pathetic man-child. I'm not giving anyone that space in my mind. The only thing that gets to live free in my mind are drag queens. Alex, Vivian's story is part of the reason why Elon Musk changed from a Democrat to a Republican, why he's so determined to do something about the woke mind virus, as he calls it, because his son started transitioning as a youngster.
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, having your son become a girl would be very traumatic. And I think that you would be able to easily see that it would be the indoctrination that these children are getting in the normal public schools or even the private schools. But what's happening here, Rita, and this is the problem that's happening in most schools when a young person decides to transition. We wouldn't let an 18-year-old, if you're under 18, get a tattoo. Why do we let young kids transition? The reason they do it, Rita, is because they want attention. And when your dad is one of the richest people in the world that is busy running 10 different companies, how else can you get your father's attention other than trying to do something that's incredibly extreme, like changing your sex? So in a way, it is very sad. This story is very sad, but maybe it radicalized Elon Musk to speak out against this and actually change the narrative and change the whole trajectory that we're currently on when it comes to this gender ideology indoctrination.
Now, we've spoken about the box office disaster that is Disney's Snow White, and the lead actress's delusions of grandeur are not helping. Here she compares herself to a priceless piece of art, the Winged Victory.
To everyone who hates when I win, the Winged Victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her. And I can only hope that despite my flaws, and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them, that at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
Alex, what has been the reaction to Disney's latest expensive own goal?
Well, the reaction has been absolutely horrible. It is the worst box office from a Disney live action remake that they've ever done. And Dumbo didn't do very well, but this is actually performing much lower than Dumbo. And this couldn't happen to a better person, in my opinion. Rachel is literally the star of a Disney movie, and she acts like she's some sort of victim. And that's the sort of mentality that is just poisoning people's minds. Like, she acts like her life is so bad, considering she's a multimillionaire actress living out every struggling actress's or actor's dream. And she just kind of, hand waves it like she's still some sort of victim, when in reality, she should be a movie star. She should be happy. She should be, apolitical, positive, but she's not that way. She loves Kamala Harris. She was, as woke as they are. And, the saying, go woke, get broke. And Disney's going to lose money on this movie. And I believe it only made less than $1 million in China, which is a huge indication that it will not do well globally.
Oh, goodness me. She didn't have a post saying, if you're going to vote for Trump, just unfollow me. And I think a lot of people have just taken that advice and are not supportive of her projects. And in fact, if the film is as bad as they say, you're not going to go along and watch it anyway. Now, another project that isn't doing too well is Michelle Obama's podcast. The figures haven't been great, and she's out there promoting it. You've got to give her credit for that. She's out there doing interviews. And in this one, she's asked about her political ambitions.
When people ask me would I ever run, the answer is no. I mean, you then if you ask me that, then you have absolutely no idea the sacrifice that your kids make when your parents are in that role. I think we've done enough. Question asked and answered. Never going to happen.
Alex, the Obamas have done enough. I think we can agree with that.
Oh, they've done more than enough. But, I think there's real trouble in paradise. I think that's why, she's not going to run, is because her and Barack are, they're on the rocks, and she wants to blame her children, and that's her prerogative. But if her and Barack were still in love, I don't know why she wouldn't consider running for president, considering that she's probably more talented than Kamala Harris, and that is, you were just talking about earlier, that is who they predict to be the next candidate for the next presidential election. So they have nobody to put up for president that is actually likable, that has really achieved anything that is noteworthy. So I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to make her do this, but she's not going to run because her and Obama are obviously having relationship issues. So she has bigger fish to fry than trying to run for president.
And that podcast, you are familiar with the medium. You would have participated in many successful podcasts. What would you advise her if you were her producer? How would you improve it? Because thus far it has been not exactly been compelling, and it hasn't been pulling in the figures.
I mean, if you want my honest opinion, how does she make a successful podcast? It'd be easy. Just say she loves Donald Trump. If she became conservative, it would be the #1 podcast. If she started talking like, oh, I love Trump, everybody would have to go listen to it. So I'm just saying, if she wants numbers, she wants views, she should do the opposite of what we expected. She should become, she should be, a big Trump supporter, a Trump podcast. Think about the numbers that would do, Rita.
You know what? You're onto something. She doesn't even have to go that far. If she just deviates on one issue from the leftist group thing, it can be anything. It could be men in women's sport. It could be net zero craziness. It could be any number of policies. If she just took one of those and took a contrary position to the left, it would have a huge reaction. Now, before you go, I've got to ask you about the Venezuelan gangbangers being sent back to their home country. Despite the fact that we've got activist judges, some of them appointed by Barack Obama, like Judge Patricia Millett, who are frustrating the efforts of the Trump administration to deport these gangbangers. This judge has even said, Alex, that these prisoners are being treated worse than Nazis. What's your response to that?
It's ironic that she compared flying Venezuelan gangbangers back to their home country of Venezuela as worse than the Nazis were treated, considering after World War II, it's a well-known fact that a bunch of Nazis tried to run away to Venezuela. So that doesn't even make sense. She just doesn't even know her world history. So trust me, those Nazis would love to be in Venezuela instead of the Nuremberg trial. So she's insane. She's trying to hand wave. I said that earlier, but she's trying to act like the Holocaust wasn't a big deal anytime she says that. And I hate that. I hate that they always use that term Nazi, because it's just so misused, and it's not what's happening to these Venezuelan immigrants. I got a free trip back home. I mean, anybody would accept a free plane trip back home. We should have sent him back in the back of a bus, my personal opinion, but, I'm not Tom Homan.
Alex Stein, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you, Rita. Always a pleasure.